All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jan.
Hi, Jan.
I'm the Preceptor of the Initiate Council, which means I'm in charge of the study program. The head of the council is Michael, who's over there.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Michael.
He's off camera. I am off camera.
And our mentor coordinator is Ashley.
Hi, Ashley.
So she's in charge of making sure all the students who want a mentor have a mentor. And especially all the new students as opposed to the ones who have been in the program a while. So we recently spent the past year revising the Initiate Path study program. It was a team effort, which was fantastic. It was me, Ashley, Emerald, Chelly, and Rabava working through that, and we kind of went course by course and made adjustments, but also decided which things we could get rid of and what things we needed to add to the program. So kind of our guiding question for the whole thing was, how does this relate to either the 3 tests you have to pass to become an initiate or your work as an initiate after you've passed them? So if a question in the course did not address one of those things, then we scrapped it, we got rid of it, and we made sure that we had questions that did address all the things we thought were important. So one of the things we did to each course was we added a practicum element. So it used to only be, I think, Magic 2, Trance 1 and 2, and Div 2, and Liturgy Practicum 1 that had journals. And so we kind of got rid of the journal requirements in a way. It doesn't have to be a journal anymore. It has to be a list of dated activities and an essay for each thing. But there's also practicum components, which are just single questions asking you to do something. And then either write about it or whatever. One of the other big things we did is we got rid of word counts, specifically to allow for alternative submissions. So if you're someone who is a much better speaker than you are a writer, you're welcome and encouraged to submit a video that answers the questions in that course. Yeah, so if you have some other way that is easier for you to convey your understanding of the content, then we want to see that. Because the biggest thing is for you to be able to answer the questions and for us to see, yes, they get it. They understand it. They've shown us that they know what they're talking about. I still expect a lot of people will probably do that in writing because that's probably the easiest way and the least labor intensive as far as trying to get a video together and have your thoughts all in order to be able to communicate that clearly. So I expect we'll probably still get mostly written submissions, but I'm looking forward to getting especially like exemplary submissions that will be video that we can then put up and share with others as a resource. One of the other things we put in is a note about sources that we're encouraging students to interview current initiates, and that is an acceptable way to gain knowledge. Because all of our current initiates have gone through this work and they know their stuff. And so if you are gaining your information from that person, then that's an acceptable way of learning, is from other people. We already have people doing it sometimes, like if they've attended a workshop at a festival, they're citing when that workshop is and who gave it and the topic. And that's an acceptable source. And so we're encouraging students to interview current initiates if they want to know something more in-depth about a topic. We actually did amazing amounts of work and updated all of our sources. So we've got current materials rather than dated materials for all of our sources. We've got a ritual packet that we put together. It's like 20, isn't it like 20 rituals?
20, maybe 26.
So yeah, between 20 and 30 rituals that hit a whole bunch of different things that are unique to specific rituals. So we made sure we hit like one from each Hearth culture, We did ones that had playlets included in them. We did American. I think there's an American one in there. But some of the weird stuff so that you can see, yes, we have this core order of ritual, but here are 20 to 30 rituals that take that in different directions, but still use that core. So that way you're not just looking through the core order of ritual tutorial, which is still a good source, but that really only gives you like one way of doing things. Or if you've seen videos online, I mean, even crane rituals, we have a ton of videos out there, but we do them all fairly similarly. And so we wanted to pull in a whole bunch of variety so that people could see the different ways that ritual is done. What are some other changes we made?
Which course was that from?
Specifically, it's for Liturgy 1 and the Practicum 1.
There's just the fact that we completely wrote new courses.
We did write new courses. So one of the new courses is called Hearth Culture Study, which rather than having this broad overview, or only having the broad overview of Indo-European, we got rid of Indo-European studies and just kept a few questions. And then really focused it in on what hearth culture are you practicing in. If you can't answer the question with that culture, pick a different one, because we know that there's some cultures that have like nothing written about them, and that's fine. But we wanted it to reflect your work rather than forcing you to generalize and pull from multiple places simply for the sake of answering those questions. We wanted it to reflect your work that you're going to be using in the 3 tests and as an initiate. What do you need to know? You need to know the culture you're working in. And some people have multiple hearth cultures, and we ask them pick one. For the purposes of this course, pick one. We scrapped Magic 1, Magic 2 as they were set up, and instead have a History of Magic course, which is a lot of what Magic 1 used to be. We have a Theory and Techniques of Magic, and we have a Magic Practicum. And so there's a lot of, and a lot of those came from the magicians.
Which means for the order, they're using like the Initiate Magic 1, Trans 1, so because you have to alter that.
They still exist as part of the GSP. So all the courses that, like if other programs are using them.
It might be better to do the technique thing rather than just Magic 1, because I think the technique is what we're going for, so you might want to switch that over to that.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the courses are harder, I think, but way more useful. Because Practicum is hard. I mean, it's how you're doing and how you're learning. And so it's much more involved, but I think it prepares the student exceptionally way more for those tests than the CTP Lite coursework. Because that's all geared towards CTP, and we were using those courses. And so this is really focused on what does the initiate need to know for those trials, and what do they need to be able to do as an initiate? Like, what are we expecting of our initiates?
I want to make the point that all of the initiate courses now are initiate specific, so every single one is like initiate history of magic, initiate liturgy practicum. And
they're labeled that way on the website, so you shouldn't be confused if you're doing those courses. They say it, every one of them starts with initiate. So when you're looking on the drop-down menu trying to submit something, they all are going to be stuck together because they're alphabetized together.
And there's also the crossover course.
Yeah. And we do have a crossover course, which I encourage anyone who is going to use that crossover course to definitely talk to either me or Ashley or your mentor and figure out what exactly you need to do from it, because it's literally all of the courses with all the new questions shoved into one course, and it's broken down by of all the courses that ADF offers from all the programs, which ones already exist. And so if you've done ritual calendars and occasions from the liturgist program, or CTP 3, I think, there's a set of questions that we pulled from that. And so if you've done that course, you'll do like the 2 new questions plus give the date that you completed that course. And so if you plan on doing the crossover course, feel free to get a personalized syllabus from your mentor or me. More than happy to do that.
Div 1 and Div 2, that's it. That's all that's been approved. So, is there like a drop down for crossover for those?
There is.
Okay.
And so like what you would do for that is you would do all of the new courses except for Div 1, Div 2,
Right.
and your crossover course would only include Div 1, Div 2.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Drop down for Div 1 crossover?
No, there's a drop down for Initiate Crossover course.
But I would only just answer those two.
You would only answer those two sections.
Alright, that makes it easy.
Rather than having like 50 bajillion
Oh,
crossovers, that would just be insane.
like
So.
double
I have a
level.
question. How does that work logistically? Like, are you, like on the website, when you submit it, do you just have to, do you just submit whatever questions that you're supposed to? And because
So-
as a preceptor, you know what people are expected to submit?
The way it's set up is that each course has an option to either put you're doing the new program or here's the date I completed this. And so when they turn that in, before I assign it out to a reviewer, I'll go through and make sure that they have included
I hadn't even thought about that. Like,
everything that they
I'll just
do.
go on the website.
Yeah.
So for people who have already completed some of the coursework of the
Yeah,
old,
we have best
Mm-hmm.
approved.
They'll get to keep all that work that's done, and then our transition date is January 1st of this upcoming year. So they either have 6 months to finish the program, which we went back and forth on how long we were going to give people, and we kind of decided if you were halfway through the program, then you were far enough in that you should finish the courses as is, which allows for you to complete one journal-based course, which is kind of...
See, for me, besides having Div 1, 2 approved, I've got all the rest of it except for like 2 or 3 courses. But I think I'll switch over to the new one because it seems to be better.
The new one is definitely going to prepare you way better for the test.
I don't care if you're redoing the stuff, but
Yeah, and if you've done the questions, you can copy and paste the
yeah.
the questions that are the same. You can copy them in to where they fit. I'm assuming that they're questions that still exist.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, cool.
but did I answer your question or did I skip over it?
I don't know, well, you sort of. I'm still a little confused.
If you repeat it, I can.
Let's say people take more than a year to finish, and
Right.
they partway through, and they've already done a couple of the courses.
Yeah.
Because the courses are now have new names and they're totally rewritten. How does that person just start over?
No, they get to keep the work they've done in the crossover. So if they've done, let's say, 4 courses from the old program, they keep those and put them into the crossover course and then do the new ones for all the other courses. They'll have to reference that crossover course to see which new courses they have to do.
Or at least do like 4 or 5 extra questions per thing.
Well, because part of it is like we scrapped Indo-European Studies but changed the name to Hearth Culture Study and added questions in. And so if they did IE Studies, they would complete the crossover course for Hearth Culture Studies, which is why I'm saying it's confusing and talk to your mentor to get the information as far as which one you need to do.
So you take one crossover course. and
There's
back
one
to
crossover course.
But include
So
all
do
the
you
work.
take it multiple times?
You turn it in once. It would essentially be the last course that you turn in.
Okay.
Because-
That's what I wondered. So it gathers up anything that you had from the current program.
Yes.
That needs to get crossed.
Yeah. I mean, you could either turn it in first or last. I would recommend doing it last just because that way if you pick up another program and you're already doing that work, then if you turn it in last, you can add that information in.
So it's personalized for each person who needs to do this.
Yes.
With what they need to.
Yes, it's a personalized course. And I mean, theoretically, you could do, if you only wanted to turn in one thing, you could turn in the entirety of the crossover course. It would make me sad, but you could do it. Let's see. Some other things we did is we added a capstone course, which kind of, it has you look at your intention letter again to kind of see if things have shifted. It asks you to pick what you think your exemplary work is, and it kind of goes through and asks you some questions that as an initiate, like for your initiators, if they only read one of your courses, they want to read the Capstone Course because that's going to give them kind of the gist of what you've done on like the woo end of things, as well as kind of explain why you want to be an initiate, what you think that entails, as well as things that they might want to know while running your initiation. The Capstone covers that kind of stuff. Yeah. We took the Indo-European language course out for the most part, and instead, because if someone turns in, like Mel is doing Lithuanian, who the hell's gonna review a Lithuanian language course? So instead what we did is we had people go through and say, where would you find these sources? Tell me where they are. Because it's more important in our digital age to know where to get the information than it is to have it, internalize it, and be able to do it, especially when we have no way of knowing. Because our reviewers aren't going to know probably most of the languages that people submit. So we wanted to find a way to kind of work around that and make it useful. Because if you're doing, like it used to be the 20 phrase book thing, which if someone, like Rob Above has all the Norse stuff online. So the person doing the Norse stuff, I mean, yes, they can go through it and do it themselves, but realistically, they're going to end up with the same answers. And it's more important that they know where to find it than it is for them to go looking for it and, like, either copy-paste or do the work back and forth. And, I mean, as a reviewer, you have no way of knowing what they've done. So we kind of took out that problem and instead said, tell me where you get the information. It might be that you have a native speaker in your community who knows this kind of thing, so tell me what they've told you. So we figured that would be a more useful skill set to have, is where to get the information rather than knowing it, because I still have to look up Greek phrases when I decide I want to use Greek phrases, because it just depends on the ritual.
I'm very happy with the new thing.
Let's see, what else did we...
My whole shtick with this was, I'm the only person thus far, I believe, who's done the initiative path as a solitaire. And so I wanted to make sure that the new course was a lot more friendly to people who are solitary or geographically isolated. So you don't have to know the right person to ask to find the information. It's all right there.
Yeah, Ashley went through and checked basically every question. Like when we were going through, and we had Zoom meetings like every 2 weeks where we'd meet for 2 hours and go through a course. And every single question, Ashley was like, okay, so how's a solitary going to do this? Where are they going to get the information? Can they actually complete this question as a solitaire?
And that's why we have a ritual packet for Liturgy Practicum, because, for example, I didn't know that a lot of the groves have their rituals on their websites, and I don't know where to find all of the grove websites, and I shouldn't have to do that level of research legwork.
Change and they get lost.
Yeah, and a big part of it was trying to compile resources together, because it shouldn't be a barrier to your learning that you don't know where to find these things. When people who have that community and are in that community are just like, oh yeah, you just go to the place. We wanted to make sure that everyone had that barrier removed for them.
That makes it easier for everyone else too. If you're in the road, so.
That's the nice thing about accessibility. It makes it easier for everyone.
Designed for learning is universal.
It is. It's great. We tried to remove as many required texts as we could, so you don't have to buy specific books to complete these things. We did the best we could to limit it down. I think we've got like maybe 3 or 4 books that we kept as you're gonna need these.
And those are the books that apply to multiple courses or are fundamental to initiate work.
Yeah, so we kept
The rights.
pages 130 through 133 in Mallory.
Which Mallory?
In search of
Only the
Indo-Europeans.
dry Sahara Desert.
Yeah, we have some of them we have that you're going to find it easiest to use certain books. So like Real Magic, you're going to find it easiest to do the Magic Theory course with Real Magic. But you can find the information other places.
I think I have it's been a few months since I looked at the resources, and I still need to clean up the MLA on that document. Sorry. But all the information's there. We have the No, Really, You Should Get This Book, which is like 3 or 4 of them. There's the Highly Recommended, and then there's other options. And I literally just went through people's coursework and said, that looks interesting, that looks interesting, that looks interesting, and then made these.
Yeah, we went through the bibliography of a lot of people's coursework to see what had people actually used to answer these questions. Because a lot of the stuff people use, like each person will go down their own personal rabbit hole following things. And so when you go through and you look at their bibliography, you find cool stuff that other people might want. So those are in that kind of suggested, if you're interested in this kind of thing. We have an excerpt from Transportation where there's a questionnaire in that book. And what we did is we got permission to reprint it. So that questionnaire is reprinted in both Trans 1 and Trans 2. And it is a question that you don't have to turn in. It's reprinted. It says this does not need to be turned in. And then the second question of that course is reflecting on what you learned, because it's like a self-analysis questionnaire to see how prepared you are to do trans work, and what kind of things you have to take into account as far as biases and stuff like that.
That's always important.
Yeah, it's very important. But because it was so, it can be very personal, we didn't want people to have to turn that in. Because you might talk about things that are triggers for you. You might talk about certain bad experiences in trance that you don't want to share. And so we wanted to make it so that you have to reflect on it, but we don't need to see your answer to every single part of this questionnaire. Yeah. What else did we change?
I mean, we have a mentorship program now.
Yes, and the mentorship program is huge.
We need more mentors, by the way.
Yes, if you want to mentor anyone, let Ashley know. But because the rotating reviewer thing has been happening for a couple years now, the program lost the continuity of having a single mentor for all your coursework, who was your reviewer and you could go to with questions. You had that point person as your point of contact. So the first thing we did before we started revising the program was we made sure that all current students who wanted a mentor got a mentor, and all new students coming into the program were matched with one.
And people are allowed to opt out of that. If you don't want to mentor, that's fine. But we're going to give you a person, and this person is reaching out to you as you're going through the program.
Yeah.
I have a question about, the last thing I turned in was, I guess, Indo-European mythology. And that was like well over a year ago. So do I am stuck to putting that kind of thing in, or do I kind of do any other thing?
What do you mean?
Before, like, you had to do one thing, and you couldn't submit anything else except until you finished that one.
Yes, that is still the case, because that's a feature of the SP tracker.
Yeah, but if you're inactive, does that get erased, or?
I think it stays in there.
If you have submitted something, it's been approved.
No, it was sent back.
Oh, it was sent back. Well, no, you're still.
I think it still lives in the SP tracker.
Like well over a year.
I think so.
It does live. So, what would happen if you move to the new program? It's a new study program. So we could flush that out probably.
Yeah, you would have to ask the web team to get rid of it for you. I don't have the controls to remove.
It's not like the thing I'm stuck on was erased. So eliminated maybe.
Yeah.
We can figure that out.
Contact me or your mentor. We'll figure it out.
Figure out when I try to submit something.
Yeah. I know it resets your reviewer after 6 months. But I don't know that it gets rid of the course.
Like in that course, you may have thrown that. I think that's one of the courses you threw out. So
Yeah, it exists, but it exists as initiates. And it might have been, we rolled it into Hearth Culture Studies. So, yeah.
And so that was one of the goals of this, was to give people the opportunity to formally dive deeper into their own Hearth culture. That's why we got rid of IE Language 1, IE Ed, and IE Studies.
Yeah, we rolled them all into Hearth Culture Study. And additionally, with the IE language, I don't care if you have Spanish transcripts. Like, I don't care. So we wanted to make it something that would be useful to your practice, which is kind of the driving force behind all these courses. Is it going to be useful to complete the trials or be an initiate? And I'm glad it was a team effort to do the revisions, because we each have different ideas of what an initiate is. And so we could bring in different perspectives of the things we thought were important for after. Because you've got your woo special initiates who are into like magic and trance. You've got your seer initiates. You've got your scholarly initiates who are like, whoa, I can't even imagine how you have all that information in your head right now. And so you've got these different types of initiates, and we wanted to make sure that we had room for each of those in the program. And we'll probably, when we eventually move on to a Circle 2 of this, we'll probably crowdsource more from the current initiates, like, what do you do? What do you do as an initiate? So that we can then ping them to help write that course and kind of allow people to specialize even more if they choose.
Like with the order, the third circle or not is independent studies. Go out and do something, bring back stuff, and report.
Yeah, I know one of the big things we've talked about for kind of spitballed around for second circle is the idea that to complete that circle, because our oath is I will lead others to the flame, like that's the end chunk of that oath, is what are you doing to fulfill that? Are you mentoring? Are you writing books? Are you, like, what are you doing to fulfill your oath? Is kind of a thought towards what do we want to include in the next circle. But that is in the brainstorm phases, so no promises on any of that.
Teaching.
What
are you doing to lead others to the flame? Question mark.
Well, it's like martial arts. I mean, as you go up, you're expected to teach, which is you're expected to teach, which helps solidify the knowledge within you.
Yep.
So it's important.
Totally. Yeah, that's why that's kind of that thought of what are you doing? You had a question, maybe?
Sure. I mean, it's a little past, but and feel free to say, let's talk about that later.
Okay.
I don't know much about the initiate's path because I'm fairly new to the whole thing, but you kind of opened the door with, here are some 3 different types of initiates. If you have revised this away from being CTP light, what is the purpose of the initiate's path? Either it's always been this, or now it is this now. Like, what are you doing?
I think you're going to get a different answer with every person you ask.
Sure.
Because each person will have their own take on it. And so I'm going to answer kind of what my general feel of it is. Other initiates can chime in with what they feel it is. And one of the interesting things is that I did the initiate program first. So I was an initiate for a while before I was clergy. And Ashley isn't clergy. And so there's a very different feel between those who have that grounding in initiate work and then something else, or not, as the case may be, versus those who started clergy and then dovetailed their initiate work into that. And so you're going to get different perspectives that way. But for me, the initiate is the person, so the priest leads the congregation. And the initiate is the person who does the one-on-one work with an individual. It's the traveling priest. It's the mantis. Is kind of my view of the initiate. They do rites of passage because they live in that liminal place. They do spirit work for people. They do divination for people. And these are all things that a priest can do. But the priest is more the public facing. and the leader of the group of people, and the initiate is the really one-on-one, when shit hits the fan and you need someone to do spirit work for you. The initiate is who you go to for that.
How does a scholar initiate fit into that then? Because I see seer, I see...
And I'm not sure because I'm not a scholar initiate.
Because you have a question about lore from some of the cultures.
And it might be something like that. Like if someone's if someone is really into writing rituals, and you want to pull, if you want to have a rite of passage experience, pulling from a specific idea, they would have the crazy knowledge to be like, there's this obscure source where this thing happens, and you learned all these things, and they can create a ritual around that for you. Yeah.
Or perhaps as another example, if another order was to be created, scholar initiate would have more resources to help put that together.
See, I always thought order should go under initiate, not clergy. Because it seems to be more in line with the initiate stuff, in my opinion.
To be fair, the initiates weren't separate when
I know.
orders blossomed.
So,
But yeah, I'm not a scholarly initiate, so I don't see how it works. But I know we have initiates that are scholarly. Like I would consider Drum a scholarly initiate. I would consider Gwernin to be a scholarly initiate. Fox would probably be a scholarly initiate. Yeah. So they're out there. But because it's not something that I do, I have a hard time seeing how they fit that. And I'm sure they do. It's not my experience, so I can't speak to it. Yeah, I'm totally a woo initiate. Like,
okay, like order started all moving, initiate kind of otherworld travel, bring back this
yeah.
shit.
And we added, with the Practicum, in every course now, we added woo instruction into a lot of those courses. So rather than being like, okay, here's some methods for entering trance, go do. we added some layering and some scaffolding in there to kind of be like, okay, here's how you set up an inner grove or a base camp. Good. You have a place to start. You have your center, your safe place that you can go back to.
That's so
So rather than just kicking people out into the other world, they now have their base camp first. And then what do we do about spirit allies? How do you know who you can trust? And so we talk, like there's questions in there about like developing relationships and creating invocations that you can use to summon them and all that kind of information. Rather than just kicking people out and telling them to do it. Because, I mean, I've spoken to some people who are either students or current initiates who, like, the trance course really messed with them. Because there's no instruction. And there was no safety net with the trance courses.
Wow, so I guess I started late because I knew all that stuff ahead of time to set that shit up.
I mean, I knew it, but it's because I worked with Michael. Like, I have the benefit of a community, but how is a solitary going to have that safety net? They're not.
Inner hall or home base or whatever.
Yeah, so we tried to scaffold some of that in there so people aren't left completely screwed.
Well, see, in the order, before you... I mean, in the order before you, if you don't have your DB done, it's okay, here's set up your inner hall, start doing it now, why it's important. So that's way fundamental.
Yeah. And there are definitely a lot of fundamentals in the courses. And we do, the way the PDF is set up is it's the suggested order to do the courses in. Some of them you have to do before others, so we have in there like magical theory and techniques you either have to do before or concurrently with magic practicum. You don't want to do the practicum before you've learned the techniques, like it just doesn't make sense. And then obviously like trance 1, trance 2, you do them in order. Div 1, Div 2, you do them in order. We added into the Div 1 the high recommendation that you choose a closed system with an ancient aspect because it will make other questions easier to answer. So if someone's using tarot, I mean, I really don't want to read the meanings of 78 cards. Like, if I'm the reviewer for that, and they're going to find doing some of the ancient questions that we ask about, like a seer who used this system, talk about them. It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to do that using a more modern system. So we put it up front rather than you do Div 1 with your system that you're used to, and then Div 2 you run into the, wait, I can't answer any of these questions. So we move that information up front so that people can see it and can make an informed decision as to whether or not they want to continue with the course of divinatory tools that they know, or if they want to start learning something new. We took some of the questions in Div 1 and put them in Div 2 because they were more advanced questions that you didn't have the base work, you didn't have the groundwork for to be able to answer them in Div 1 very well.
For Div 2, we also now allow online typing-based divinations, so you don't have to FaceTime with somebody, you don't have to go find somebody local for which can help with solitaire, and people who are more have to be quiet about that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I had to out myself publicly in order to fulfill my divination requirements, and I'm not everybody's in a place where they can do that.
Yeah, I thought divination that's people just came up.
Yeah. Right, but if you're a solitary and you're geographically isolated and you're stuck where you are, it's really hard to do that kind of thing.
Especially if you're in the kind of town where letting people know that you're going to be.
Right.
Well, it's like a psychic fair, you can maybe look at it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you don't have any of those community-based things, what we had to ask was, how are you going to answer this question? And we tried to also be aware of various accessibility issues. So we had Chelly checking all of our, so like Ashley checked all of our things for how's solitary going to do this. Chelly went through and checked all of our questions for, okay, someone who has a disability of whatever variety, how are they going to answer this question? So we had to be aware of, like, is this source available as an audiobook? Like, do you have to read it or can you hear it? So what kind of sources are we choosing as required or highly recommended? And are they accessible to everyone? We had to look into things where if we're asking someone to perform a rite, is it something they can do with a physical limitation? And what kind of things do they need to be aware of for that? We also looked into socioeconomic stuff. If you can't afford these sources, how are you going to do this? We don't want that to be a barrier for someone in their spiritual practice, which is why we have like 4 books that are, no, really, you're going to want these books.
And I think they're all 25 or under.
Yeah. And we tried, at least in the States, they're all available through interlibrary loan. They're not in Canada. There were some that we couldn't find, and we didn't have another good source to use. But in the States, they're all available through the library. So we tried to be really aware of making sure that people could do these if they have limited means. I don't know that we require any video rituals. I think we gave the option of written, audio, or video. So whichever one you can do. So if someone has a mobility issue where they can't type or they can't write, they can submit an audio or a video. If someone has some sort of limitation on memorization, they can do a written, or they can read off something for an audio or something like that. So we tried to make sure that people who had difficulties with those things had a way to still gain the information and be able to do it. So that was really important to us as we were working through it. Any other questions? Any other thoughts from Ashley?
Not really. It's not at all.
Yeah. I can read off the course titles for y'all.
I really like the fact that you went back through people's coursework that they've done and finding all the sources that they had used. I mean, you may or may not know, I tried to do that with the Liturgy
Oh, yeah.
about 4 or 5 years ago, and I got shut down hard. But at any rate, yeah, that's a really, really good idea.
Yeah, we also have our sources, in addition to being part of the course, there's also a link in the PDF to a Google Drive. So we have a living document of sources. So if someone turns in something new with new sources that are really, really awesome, we can add it to that living document so that people who then go to look at that have more options for things to use.
We no longer have out-of-print books from the 70s that are required.
Right.
Well, that's what we're, yeah.
So, yeah, we tried to make it as accessible as possible in as many avenues of accessibility as we could.
Yeah, something else is really cool to see throughout ADF, but at least in each individual programs, is like, here's your list of sources for the whole program, and here's all the different courses that this will help you with.
We
because
kind of have that.
Yeah, because I know in CTP, there are certain books that I've used over and over and over, and there might not be on the resource list.
Right.
But
right. Well, that's why Ashley went through and she has the no, really, you're gonna want these books, and then
which are the required, and then there's the strongly recommended, which is these are really helpful for several courses or for your general initiate work, and then the suggested resources are here's your reference.
Yeah. So courses that we have, and these all start with Initiate, so that they don't get lost in the drop-down menu. We've got a Liturgy 1, which combines, so Liturgy 1 for the initiates and Liturgy 1 for the priests was different before. And so we combined those and added in some cosmology, and that is the Liturgy 1 course. We've got Hearth Culture Study, which includes the IE Studies and the IE Language course a lot. And then we have IE Myth. We have an IE Myth course, which includes a lot of the stuff from the previous IE Myth course. We also pulled some things that are in IE Myth 2. I'm trying to think if there's any others in there. We have a Liturgy Practicum course, which, rather than being a really short-looking course, includes the things from Kai's books about these are the different types of prayer. Like, we kept that kind of stuff, but we also included in there a note that you should, for ideas of what to do, you want to do it concurrently with liturgical writing and bardry, which will give you you have to have 25 weeks of liturgical activities. The liturgical writing and bardry course is enough questions that you can go through and you can answer those at the same time as Lit Prac, and have the things that you're writing, and then you're using them in your Liturgy Practicum, and then you're writing them. So it kind of jumps back and forth, and we recommended doing those together.
The Bardic stuff's a lot longer now.
Yeah, the Bardic stuff's a lot longer. A lot of it pulled from the current liturgical writing courses in the CTP. And we scrapped a lot of the history of bardry courses that were in general Bardic studies. We included some basic literary things. So, like, we talk about what are literary devices and how do you write poetry kind of things. We added those in because not everyone knows that kind of information, and you need somewhere to learn it. And so we included stuff like that. Div 1 and Div 2 are still there. They still exist. We added in some more foundation work for that. As I mentioned, we've got History of Magic, Magical Theory and Techniques, and Magical Practice, Trance 1 and Trance 2, and then the Capstone Course. So a lot of the courses are longer, but as I said, they definitely prepare you way better for the trials than they did before. Any other questions, comments, concerns, snide remarks?
They're both not live. I'm happy with it. Glad I voted for it.
I'm glad you voted for it too.
I was impressed how quickly you pushed it. Like,
It took us a year to do it.
I don't know, but we pushed through this council board. Are you serious?
It was a lot of work. It was a lot of Saturday mornings.
But if you're not on the council floor, you don't understand the person's nasty.
I wish I could have seen that. I'm
Pushing it
not-
through like, holy shit, she's don't play around. You're like, bulldog it.
Thank you for that.
That was impressive. Like, holy wow.
That's all I got then, unless anyone has anything else.
Not looking forward to doing this.
I am going to go back through and redo my courses because I think having written them, I should also do them. Like, I feel like I should.
I think for the order, we have to change the magic one to that the theory and parameters and technique.
Yeah.
That's what we're going for.
Yeah. We did also add in there that if you are a current initiate, at no point will you ever have to do the new courses to maintain your initiate status. Very explicitly put that in there.
The courses are designed to get you through the ordeals.
To get you through the ordeals and better prepare you for being an initiate.
The ordeals are what make you an initiate.
Yes.
Not really the coursework that you do before that.
Yes.
So that's why you don't have to redo it.
Yes.
I am the only initiate west of the Rocky Mountains.
We'll fix that eventually.
Are the
I
Grove
have many-
Sisters not west of the Rocky Mountains?
They're east of the Rocky Mountains. They're in Denver.
They're near the
That's where the Rockies start.
Yes. Well, I think they were in Colorado, but I don't.
Right on the edge of the Rockies.
And I used your trans one a lot doing mine.
Did you?
Yeah.
So who are you coursing into
Well,
initiate work?
I've been trying and I can't get any interest in Seattle or Portland.
Maybe we'll try and change that.
Well,
to
do it. You can try this.
Beyond the
Now
gates.
this new
You can
exciting
try.
program.
Yeah, like I'm excited about the new courses. I not only do I feel like I should do them because having been one that helped write them, but there's cool questions in there, and like I want to explore them.
As Kirk and I can attest, after doing Div 2, sometimes you have to find the problems.
It's fun. It was fun. We had a good time.
So, and we're gonna give it a couple years maybe, and then we might start poking at Circle 2, but I don't think we should implement it until we've let it sit for a while and let the first circle sit for a while
Let some people through.
and get some people through it, and then start.
Change it. Or add it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the intent is there to add a second, possibly a third circle, but
And we have a broad outline of what
yeah,
that might look like.
yeah.
I have no idea what it is, so I'm not limited, so.
But yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much.